Right, good evening to everybody, and thanks for clicking on to the Tuesday edition of Vogan's European Outlook. It is the 9th of December. We have Storm Bram continuing to wind up west of Ireland, moving northeast, and it is going to provide a rather wet and windy night to come. It has been wet through the course of Tuesday. The rains were heavy here, certainly at my Vogan Weather HQ earlier on today. They've eased off. Winds are almost non-existent at the minute, but that will change as we progress through the overnight period tonight. More on that in just a second. This is the GFS Extended Ensemble over the next 7 days in terms of the upper heights. We've got a record strong block over the far North Pacific, and that is essentially driving this pattern across much of the northern hemisphere. We've seen that stretched polar vortex providing cold air from Siberia across the top into North America. We've been seeing temperatures close to minus 47 in North America. On the other side of the pole, we're talking about minus 54 Celsius at the moment. So if you're asking where is the cold, we've certainly got some cold in a few pockets of the northern hemisphere at the minute. We do also have a lot of milder associated with this pattern, hemispherically speaking. But the polar vortex is essentially not playing ball with Europe when it comes to cold prospects. And as I've already said here, what I'm providing here is a fair, honest, and balanced approach. At this minute in time, the prospects of that cold towards the back half of December is probably reducing because we do have this continued momentum. There is still modelling suggesting towards that run up the Christmas period that we begin to lose a little bit of that intensity of the jet over the Atlantic, and in turn we start to see a bit of a build-up of high pressure. But there is still a lot of uncertainty, but I would say the prospects are beginning to lower somewhat here. But I'm not writing things off just yet, and the reasons why is there is a few aspects that I just simply don't want to jump too quick. So you've heard me saying this before, but we'll wait and see what happens. But what is going on within the Pacific? We are going to see an atmospheric river ram the northwestern portion of North America with some very wet, windy conditions here. One low after another streaming up into the Pacific Northwest of the United States, British Columbia. But eventually what is going to happen is we are going to begin to see a change in the pattern over both the Pacific, then in turn over North America, and then in turn into the Atlantic and Europe as well. And that, it'll be interesting to see how that evolves. But certainly, like I say, the Pacific is driving the North American pattern. It is allowing Arctic air to descend southwards. We are going to see over the weekend coming up the most potent Arctic air mass of the season drive down the spine of North America. That in turn is going to continue to fire that strong jet and send deep areas of low pressure either towards the northwest UK. Generally in that area, because of high pressure blocked over Europe, it's sending the storm track up towards Iceland and even towards Greenland actually. But over the next 24 hours we're going to get a pretty good whack in terms of wind and rain. But you can see here as we play through this loop, so you can see here very strong anomalous high pressure system over the Barents Sea. I believe that's the Barents Sea. We've got the ridge over the west coast of North America. We've got the deep negative extending from North America. Remember, when you've got temperatures minus 30 in Quebec, low 20s down in South Florida, you've got that sharp gradient. You're driving that jet, and obviously we've got areas of low pressure that develop over this region. Then that gets driven eastbound towards the UK and Ireland. We've got multiple areas of low pressure that is developing on that eastern seaboard of the United States, and that is then going to lead to this continued wet and windy theme across the northwest of Europe here. But if we play through this, you can see all the way 11th through the 18th, the 15th, 16th through the 23rd. You can see here that we remain with low pressure. Notice that we're starting to build a ridge over the United States, which is quite interesting here. Continuing to play through here, you notice that as that ridge begins to build over the lower 48, we're starting to see a bit of a weakness of the polar jet here, and the reasons why is you're changing the atmosphere over North America. That then in turn reduces or shuts off that fuel source of that strong jet, and therefore we allow the pressure to build. Yep, we've got an area of high pressure seen by the GFS extended from the Azores northwards here. We've also got high pressure over Europe that is beginning to perhaps build westwards over Europe. If we look at Europe specifically, you can see here, if we go back to the current pattern, we've got very much that area of high pressure that is essentially stopping these deep lows from just sweeping straight across the UK. We're seeing them more lifting west of, over the next 24 hours with Bram. We're seeing this system basically transfer northwards here. All the wet and messy weather, all the weather associated with this system is affecting Ireland and the UK overnight tonight. Then it'll lift north, and we've got this next system in the series that will affect this region between UK, Iceland, up towards Greenland. But it's this area of high pressure that's essentially protecting us somewhat anyway from these areas of low pressure just barreling straight across. But if you notice here that with the change in the Pacific, North America, then the Atlantic, we see the changes changing over Europe as well. And this is a period 19th through the 26th. We've got higher pressure over much of Europe, including the UK and Ireland here. Notice here that we're starting to see higher pressure building in association with the change further westwards. So you can see here as we progress through, but this is the current and latest visible satellite imagery, and Bram is lifting northwards as we speak. The latest pressure chart looks like this here. Let's refresh, and we are talking about pressure close to 960 in millibars here, well to the west of the UK as well as Ireland here, but we're beginning to see the winds picking up in association with this. In terms of current temperatures, we're talking about very mild conditions, 14, 15, even 16 through the central belt of Scotland. We've got the 16s, possibly a 17 somewhere that north coast of Wales, northwestern England, around Lancashire, for example. But it's mild across the board, 10 on the north coast. We've got the 15, 16 on the south coast. So very, very mild afternoon and evening to come. In terms of the winds, this is in kilometers per hour. Not particularly windy across much of central and eastern UK at this moment in time. We are beginning to start to see those winds increase over Ireland, Northern Ireland, perhaps the western side of the UK. We're talking about wind gusts in excess of 132 kilometers per hour at the tip of the Clean Peninsula. But further east, winds are picking up, but nothing too exceptional at this moment in time. During the overnight period tonight, we are going to see the winds increase 50 mile per hour quite widely across the bulk of the UK and Ireland, where you've got the core of strongest winds 50 to 60 to 70 miles per hour across more northern areas of the UK. But it's that kind of west, northwest, including the inner and outer Hebrides, where we're most concerned in terms of where that amber warning is in place. You could be expecting winds in excess of 80, 90, possibly a local gust to 100 miles per hour, but we'll wait and see. Certainly, I may provide an update on this on the channel later on. In terms of current radar, this is how the rain is affecting the UK and Ireland at the minute. Here we've got the several clusters of heavy persistent rainfall, one over the west-southwest of Ireland, some over parts of the north as well as the south of the UK. But we have got some windy conditions to come after this system clears out. And if you look at the GFS model here, you can see that we've got some pretty lively winds, well in excess of a hurricane force, all the way through the rest of this week. We've got more deep lows, like I say, passing through. This is a loaded pattern that is getting driven by that polar air getting drawn southwards over North America. And you can see here multiple other areas of low pressure. Those blacks and even the kind of, what would that, creamy colour in the blacks, probably representing wind gusts, in excess of 100, 115 miles per hour. But if we look at the overview chart here, some of the depths of these lows is pretty impressive. I would not be surprised if we see another couple of named storms over the next 10 days or so, given this pattern overall. But if we play through, you can see here that out goes Bram. Then we've got the next frontal system associated with a low that is down to 934 millibars here. This is the kind of depth of lows that we're talking about. Like I say, thanks to high pressure over Europe, we are essentially protected. But you can see here that as we move through the course of the upcoming weekend, you've got windy conditions, west to southwesterly winds, mild overall, with that 1035 high on the southern slopes of the Alps. We've got a 952 millibar low just to the west of Iceland here, and you've got a lot of weather coming in from the west. We've got a very, very strong jet stream here to speak about. And then as we move towards the middle of next week, the GFS is dropping pressure in an area of low pressure down to 910 millibars, which is pretty ridiculous stuff. So we'll wait and see. Thankfully, that area of low pressure is nowhere near the UK, but we have more areas of low pressure that are just kind of getting driven in by that strong Atlantic jet. And then it looks as if the GFS, at least anyway, is trying to send something a little bit more in the way of high pressure towards the few days running up to Christmas. But it's certainly been wet over the last 45 days. This is the precipitation anomaly, according to the CPC data here. And the wettest conditions compared to averages: northwestern England, North Wales, southern Ireland, southwestern Scotland. Western Iberia has been pretty wet. North and south Italy, the Balkan region's been pretty wet. Very dry north, west, south France, if you notice here. And there's a mixture of wet versus dry across Central and Northern Europe, as you can see here. Still quite wet across Western Russia, drier than average across Iceland. And in terms of the longer term pattern then, well, there's not a huge amount to speak about. Let's have a look and see. In terms of the 850s for Inverness, we're going well above average, plus 8 Celsius at the 850 or 5,000 foot above our heads. Then it drops close to average, goes above average again, and then it kind of hovers around about, if not just slightly above average. I suppose the majority of these members of the GFS model is above that red line, which represents average. So we just continue to watch this pattern. In terms of the 850 temperatures off the ECMWF model, cold across eastern Russia, very warm underneath that area of high pressure. Far east Russia, parts of western Alaska, where we've been seeing the first minus 50 Fahrenheit in the past few days. Bitterly cold conditions across northwestern Canada, extending into the eastern half of North America. That's then driving that strong jet across the Atlantic. Very mild compared to average at 850 over the UK and Ireland. But if we look at Europe specifically, I also want to draw your attention here to the ECM model here, how it's indicating that we have a flirt with something a little bit cooler than average, especially down towards Iberia, warmer than average across the north. That may be hinting at a higher pressure trying to build perhaps to the north, but to be honest with you, I'm not really necessarily buying into that too much. The CFSV2 upcoming 7 days has that deep low west of Ireland and the UK, strong area of high pressure over Central and Eastern Europe. In the day, 8 to 14, continue to drive this very mild theme, 16th through the 23rd of December. Week 3 looks like this, with higher pressure trying to perhaps establish itself. Once we lose that gradient over the west side of the Atlantic, we then weaken the jet and then allows higher pressure to build. In terms of precipitation over the next 7 days, wetter than average, no surprise there. Week 2 is wetter than average, again, no surprise. In terms of temperature anomalies, well, can you guess? It looks like it's going to be warmer than average. Certainly week 1 and week 2, which takes us to the 23rd of December, warmer than average. In terms of the stratosphere, we've got a favourable MJO phase 8 at the minute. And remember what I said to you with regards to this stretched vortex between Siberia and Canada. I said that that is not favourable for Europe. That has proved to be the case. I want to show you the 50 millibar level here. Let's look at the Northern Hemisphere stratosphere, and let's have a look at the 50 millibar setup here. This is the current situation, and we do have an interesting look to this, where you've got the core of coldest air over the Asian side of the pole and over North America. That is essentially reflected down within the troposphere in terms of the coldest areas on the planet at the moment here, Western and Central Russia and over North America. You notice here that we've got this warm anomaly here, positive heights, Greenland, Iceland, and towards the East Asia, Northwest North America side here. So this certainly does have a fairly decent reflection at the minute. If we play through this, you can see here that we do have some positives showing up here. We do have movement within the warm-cold anomaly at 50 millibars here. But certainly this pattern has very much been driven, favouring North America, very much remaining very unsettled and stormy across western portions of Europe here. And to be honest with you, I'm not seeing any major changes that would suggest anything particularly exciting during the back half of December. But we'll wait and see what happens. Let's finish off by looking at the 10 millibar level here. And I think the polar vortex looks as if it's going to try and re-strengthen as it repositions up over the pole. Play through this loop here. We've got another surge of warming showing up here, which is quite interesting. Continue to play through, and then you notice here it's trying to reposition back over the top, and there perhaps is a bit of a kiss of death. In terms of the polar vortex, at least, you don't necessarily have to have a major southern stratospheric warming to provide cold in Europe. You also equally don't have to have, you can have the tropical forcing that drives the hemispheric pattern, but sometimes when you start to see a strengthening of the polar vortex at 10 millibars, that may start to begin to down well into the lower stratosphere. When it does so, it then reflects into the troposphere, and it usually drives a pretty strong zonal pattern across, if not the hemisphere, at least the Atlantic and into Europe. I want to finish off, I said this before, but I want to finish off by showing you this here. This is the polar cap heights, which shows in terms of higher pressure within the stratosphere. And you quite often find when you've had a strat warming, you want to see this kind of downward propagation of reds representing positive heights into the lower portions of the strat, and then that feeds into the troposphere here. There is some elements where you can see that drip effect showing up within the the Arctic region over top of the pole from stratosphere into the troposphere, but you're seeing here not a great reflection in terms of positive heights. You want to see that positive heights propagate from upper strat into the troposphere as we go through the next couple of weeks, and we're not necessarily really seeing that showing up. We do have a couple of little lobes that they are filtering down into the 500 millibar pattern towards, around about now actually, and then a little bit further down the road around the 13th of December. But we'll continue to watch this space as we go forward. I hope you're enjoying the channel, and I'll be back again tomorrow as always. Stay safe. Certainly will be a pretty wild night to come, and we'll look at how strong the winds were, how much rainfall we've seen, possibly expecting 100 millimetres of rain in South Wales, for example, possibly some local gusts pushing 100 miles an hour in the northwest later on this evening. So stay tuned and take care. Bye for now.